Looking for a place where everyone in your family can thrive? The Jewish Community Center of Greater Albuquerque is your local hub for wellness, learning, and connection. Whether it's our state-of-the-art fitness center, early childhood programs, or vibrant cultural events, there's something for everyone. Everyone is welcome at the JCC. Join us and be part of a diverse community that supports your whole family's growth and happiness. Visit jccabq.org to learn more.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Good News Conversations here on the Albuquerque Journal Podcast Network. I'm your host, Good News reporter Gino Gutierrez, and before we dive into this week's episode, I want to remind everybody at home to be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you like this content or any other podcast we're producing here on the Albuquerque Journal Podcast Network. Your support means that we can provide you with more local journalism and stories that matter to you. This episode is going to be focused on a recap of the good news stories that we covered in August, an overview here for our listeners and for a couple of our readers as well, on the stories that we covered throughout the month, starting with one that I was particularly interested in. I got a tip from one of our readers through our good news email, and it was about Richard Vocolo. And the awesome part about Richard is he has been in business here in Albuquerque for the past 36 years. Now, it's awesome to see a local business owner who has planted down roots in the community that has been involved that long. But what also sets Richard apart through his business is he owns the business called the Vehicle Maintenance Place. So it's all about vehicle maintenance, all about helping his customers maintain their vehicles for as long as they can. But Richard has also done two things for the community. One, he's helped his customers maintain their vehicles. And two, he's offered mentorships for the past 36 years to anybody who was interested in learning about vehicles, learning about service, or who just had an interest in wanting to get into the vehicle maintenance field. And he's been doing this free of charge for over 30 years. And when I met with Richard at the beginning of the month, I kind of talked to him a little bit about what was the inspiration behind starting this program. Because, again, it's very interesting to have somebody who's willingly give information out to people interested in a career field for free. And Richard said it all really began in 1989 when he had a customer and his son bring in a car that they had actually gotten from their neighbor. And Richard distinctly remembers this customer's son because, in his words, half of his hair was dyed purple and he had an earring in his ear. And Richard, he was a former Marine. He had a military background. So that look was a little unusual for him. He wasn't accustomed to it. But nonetheless, he looked over the vehicle with the customer and his son, and he could kind of see that the son had an interest in learning more about the car. So he offered to teach him about it. He just said, "Do you want to learn to this car?" And the son said, "Yes, I would love to learn about the car." And he began mentoring him about service, about how to maintain his car, make sure it's up to snuff. He said within a month, the kid no longer had half of his hair dyed purple, no longer had an earring, and he was very much into cars. And it was that little experience, Richard said, that was the catalyst for how he started this mentorship program. Now, it's a very unique program in the sense that, as I mentioned before, it is free to these people, but it's also not free in the sense that they still have to put the work, they have to put the labor in if they really want to be a part of this. Richard buys them safety equipment. He buys them the necessary tools they need to work on these vehicles. He estimates that roughly costs him about $1,000 for every person that enters this mentorship program. And all he asks for return is that they respect him, they respect his shop, and they respect the rules of the program as well. Those rules are what Richard refers to as a form of tough love. He calls them, the necessary groundwork these kids need to develop in order to be successful later on down the road if they decide to pursue a career in vehicle maintenance or really whatever they decide they want to do moving forward. So those rules include giving a portion of your paycheck to your parents, grandparents, your partner, whoever you happen to be living with at the time. He also has them have an active bank savings account so they can save their money. He also does not allow smoking, does not allow drinking, and explains that in order to be on time to your shift, you have to be there 15 minutes early in order to be ready to start your work day. So those are just a little bit of an insight to what Richard classifies as his rules or his tough love. But the program has been very successful for him. 14 participants have gone on to graduate college after attending his program. He currently has two 18-year-old graduates, both recent graduates from Highland High School, working at his shop. And those two will attend CNM's vehicle maintenance program that they have, and are both very much excited to have this opportunity to get into the field before college. And when I asked them what they plan on doing, they said after the program is over at CNM, they do plan on coming back to the vehicle maintenance place and continuing to work with Richard. So an amazing story about a community, really a cornerstone community business here in Albuquerque, helping future generations pursue their career goals. A couple of the other stories that we highlighted, Verizon gave out a couple hundred free laptops to students at the beginning of the month at the Albuquerque School of Excellence. They did this through their Verizon Innovative Learning Program. This is the first time they brought this program to New Mexico, and the Albuquerque School of Excellence was the 34th school this fall that was able to take advantage of the program. Each student received a free Google Chromebook, a free charger, a free protective case, carrying case, and 2 years of free internet data as well. That way they're able to access their schoolwork regardless of where they are and what they're doing. And in total, Verizon supplied 656 laptops to these students, which will go a very long way because, as many of you know, a lot of education nowadays is done online through different sorts of programs that schools utilize. So those laptops will go a very long way. For our readers who are tuning in and for our listeners that may not know that we had started this program, this month we here at the Albuquerque Journal were very proud to launch the Good News Roundup. This is a new weekly column that we're publishing every Tuesday that really just highlights a lot of the good news stories that we just didn't have the time to get to throughout the week. We are kind of grabbing those stories and we're kind of compiling them together in a column that we're publishing every single week to highlight those stories. And that's really driven by you, our audience at home. So I encourage any and everybody that has an idea for a good news story to please reach out to our email, goodnews@abqjournal.com. Share your good news with us. We want to highlight everything positive that's going on in New Mexico. And the Good News Roundup is the place where you're going to find those stories. So we launched that. We got to cover some very cool stories in the roundups that we've done so far. We got to cover a group of National Guard soldiers that received the Medal of Valor from Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. That's the highest honor any National Guard soldier can receive. We also covered some grants and scholarships that were given out by different organizations. And we're also highlighting certain events that are going on in the community as well. In the most recent Good News Roundup, you can find a story about a September food drive that the Department of Senior Affairs is doing for the Roadrunner Food Bank. So feel free to check that out. Again, it is going to be your number one source for finding the good news stories going on around the state. And of course, like I mentioned before, a chance for you to share your good news with us so we can share it with the greater community. Moving on to a couple of more stories that we did this month. One of them was Senator Martin Heinrich visiting a local farm here in Los Ranchos that is actually run in part by the Albuquerque Sign Language Academy and their students. And the awesome part about this program is it's all built around secondary education and career learning for these students. The Albuquerque Sign Language Academy is a charter school here in town that is catered to students that range from completely deaf to hard of hearing to hearing students. It offers a place for them to come together and learn as a community and have the resources really necessary for them to be able to absorb an education that fits their specific needs. So Senator Martin Heinrich actually secured $300,000 in federal funds through the fiscal year 2024 appropriation bills for the school, which will help them build out their education and career training programs. And while he visited them down in Los Ranchos, he actually donned a beekeeping suit along a couple of other students as well, and actually went out to the bee farm that the students are maintaining out there, collected some honey alongside the students, got up close and personal with a couple of bees as well. And was able to check out a few of the other services these students are doing: honey collection, wildflower bouquet arrangements, growing fresh fruit and vegetables, growing their own lemons to make lemonade. So this is a very diverse secondary education program that the Sign Language Academy of Albuquerque is offering their students. And the main objective is to really prepare these kids for a career past school. And to offer them an insight into the possibilities they have, the careers that are available to them, given their ability level. And it was awesome to see. The senator was all smiles as he watched the kids collect honey, and he stood there next to him and was really just taken aback by the work that these students are doing, and as was I. It's very cool to see a program cater around students and their ability level, really showing that if you put the time and effort in, anything is possible regardless of a disability or anything you might be dealing with. Another great story highlighting some local law enforcement heroes. Got a chance to stop by the Metro Crime Stoppers luncheon here in Albuquerque that took place a couple weeks ago. The lunch is a part of their annual Heroes meal that they put on every single year. And the objective of it is to not only talk about the successes that Crime Stoppers has had in terms of helping law enforcement across Albuquerque and New Mexico solve crime, but to highlight 4 law enforcement officers that are really making a difference in the community. These law enforcement officers are nominated by their fellow police officers, really for just actions that they took during their time on duty that really went above and beyond anything they had been asked to do. And it was awesome to see Albuquerque Police Officer Precious Candelaria, Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office Detective Kevin Carhart, Albuquerque Police Department Sergeant Jeffrey Bloodworth, and 2nd Judiciary District Attorney Office Agent Sarah Martinez were the 4 law enforcement officers that were recognized. Each and every one of them was recognized, again, like I mentioned, for going above and beyond the call of duty, and really just exemplifying what it means to be a law enforcement officer and protect your community. And it was just a very cool luncheon to see. There were raffles that were going on as well. There were donation drives that were going on as well. And each and every one of those went towards Crime Stoppers being able to offer rewards for tips that will lead eventually, we hope, to them solving crimes and bringing justice to victims and their families. So really a twofold event. Very awesome to see law enforcement officers honored, and awesome to see the community come together behind such a worthy cause. Moving on to a little bit more of the feature highlight pieces we kind of did this month. One of them was about a gentleman by the name of Bill Hulb. And what makes Bill and sets him apart from everybody is a couple weekends ago, the Watermark at Cherry Hills, which is a senior living community up in the Northeast Heights, hosted a senior living artisan show. And now this artisan show was designed for them to raise donations and funds for the Watermark's nonprofit, which helps families and children in need purchase goods, pay for bills, maybe even pay for medical procedures as well. But the entire show was based around handmade goods that the senior center residents or senior center employees had made. And Bill was really kind of the highlight of that event. And the reason why I say he was the highlight is that Bill spent his life making oil paintings, oil and water art paintings. And he lived a very colorful life. He is a Korea War veteran. He created numerous artworks that depicted the southwestern United States, and his prints of his work were available for sale at the artisan show that they had. I was able to sit down and discuss Bill's life with him, kind of talk about his inspiration behind why he's making these southwestern artworks and really where that came from. And it was a really interesting conversation to be able to sit down with somebody so talented who was able to make the extraordinary landscapes and extraordinary photos he made sound so routine and so second nature. But awesome conversation. I was so glad I was able to talk with him about the work he has done, and just it's really incredible artwork. We'll show some photos to you guys as I'm talking over this to kind of give you an idea, but Bill's work was very, very extraordinary. Coming to the end of the month now, just want to run through a few more stories we did. We covered Albuquerque Public Schools celebrating a donation they had received from the Corporate Volunteer Council, or CVC. The CVC is an associations of business and corporations here in Albuquerque that band together for an annual school drive donation and fundraiser every single year for APS students. So this year they were able to donate quite a bit of supplies. They also donated roughly around $25,000 in donations to APS this year. So they dropped off those school supplies a couple weekends ago. They were able to, kind of get a little bit of recognition from Albuquerque Superintendent Gabriela Blakey. Also, the First Lady was there, First Lady of Albuquerque, Elizabeth Kristen Keller. So local officials were there to kind of honor the contributions they've made, which was awesome to see. Another really awesome story I want to highlight is on the campus of the University of New Mexico now, for anybody who's familiar with where Hodgins Hall is, I'm sure for most of our listeners, they probably know it best as the alumni building. But it actually used to be, it's one of the oldest buildings on campus, and used to be actually where UNM's library used to be. And back in the early 1900s, that is where Julia Brown Asplin actually worked as the University of New Mexico's first professionally trained librarian. Now, why do I bring her up? Because she was not only the university's first professionally trained librarian, she was also a leader during the women's suffrage movement here in Albuquerque and in New Mexico. And in recognition for her work, she was actually honored with a trailhead. It's part of the markers are part of a national project called the National Votes for Women Trail, which was started by the nonprofit Women's Historic History Sites. And the goal is to really kind of highlight places of significance for the women's suffrage movement. That marker was placed there in honor of Julia and the work she did to secure women's right to vote here in New Mexico. And she was honored during a ceremony by the League of Women's Voters of Central New Mexico, who put together a ceremony for her to honor the marker's placement. And there it will forever stand now, a testament to the work she was doing, which is, again, very extraordinary. Speaking of UNM, we also highlighted a group of, I would call them intrepid bikers, that biked across the country. A few of them were UNM students. They rode over 3,000 miles across the country in 56 days from Seattle, Washington, all the way to Coney Island in New York City. And why they did that, you ask? Simply because one of the bike riders, Lars Larson, just said he wanted to see if he could do it. They were able to accomplish the feat. Very impressive. Had a chance to talk to a couple of the bikers who really just stressed to me that the most difficult part of the entire event was honestly the mental fatigue, not the physical fatigue, which I thought was pretty interesting, but nonetheless, a very, very impressive feat. I definitely could not have done that myself. I was exhausted just listening to them explain the ride, but again, it was a true testament to their will and their willingness to put themselves out there and to really do it, which is awesome to see. And the last story I want to highlight that we covered over the month of August came at the tail end, and it was a story about how the Assistance League of Albuquerque is partnering with 12 APS elementary schools to help them curb chronic absenteeism that they're seeing among their students. Last week, Albuquerque Public Schools Superintendent Gabriela Blakey, in her first State of the District address, really cited chronic absenteeism as one of the cornerstone issues that the district is trying to address. She said nearly 31% of APS students were chronically absent during last school year. So what the Assistance League of Albuquerque is doing is they're partnering with these schools. They're offering them $5,000 in funding for them to implement programs that will help curb absenteeism. They're going into their second year of this program, starting with this school year. Last year, the average improvement, attendance improvement, I should say, among the schools that they were partnered with, improved by 18.4%. That's a huge jump for these kids, and really just goes to show you that it's all about getting families involved, all about getting parents involved, and all about making school exciting for these kids. And that's what each and every one of these schools have implemented. And the Assistance League could not be any more happy or pleased with the results they're seeing, and are really excited to honestly see those results just grow as this school year goes on. And I will be sure to keep an eye on them to kind of see how that progress is coming along. So, as you could probably tell, a very, very busy month of August, but a very, very rewarding month of August as well. We highlighted so many good news stories that happened not only around Albuquerque, but we've now launched a medium for us to tell more of the good news stories that are going around the state as well, which just helps bring us closer to that goal of being New Mexico's source for good news stories that are happening anywhere and everywhere in our state. And I can't stress it enough that we could not do it without you, our listeners, and our readers. Again, I want to encourage any and everybody that has any good news that they feel like sharing, please send us an email at goodnews@abqjournal.com. And if you're listening to this podcast, once again, if you love the content we're bringing to you, whether you find it here on Good News Conversations or on any of the podcasts we're doing here on the Albuquerque Journal Podcast Network, please like, share, and subscribe. Feel free to check out the show notes as well. There is a link there that'll take you for a code to get a discount on a digital subscription to the journal. That's just helping us. Again, you're helping support local journalism, which in turn helps us bring the stories that you guys care about. So thank you again for tuning in. Can't wait to dig into what September has to offer in terms of good news stories. And just want to, again, thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.
Thank you for joining us. You can find this episode and all our podcasts on the Albuquerque Journal website, abqjournal.com, as well as on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and SoundCloud. If you enjoy our podcasts, please like and subscribe, and consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal to help us continue to bring you more content like this. See the show notes for a discount on a digital subscription. Thank you for supporting the Albuquerque Journal, New Mexico's leading local news source.